occurred. And we're live. That should be fine. Let's see what we're going to do. You are a helpful assistant. In fact, personal assistant. Answer questions to the best of your ability. We're just going to leave it at that for now. Shut that off. I always forget to shut off the dictation mode. We'll just save it there. And we'll come back and I'm going to turn the temperature way down. Let's see. I don't need, let's think about what I need for response type here. I think eventually, this one I don't think is going to need file search. I don't think I need a code interpreter. I am going to use functions. But for now, let's just get these connected together. So what I'm going to do, get into make. Let me see. Let's get logged in. Should be fine. And the idea here is that we're going to create, I've been tinkering with this idea of kind of like a, it's one thing to be like, let's set up a scenario or set up, some automation to solve some business process for other people, which is something that, we do a lot of. But then when it comes to my own business, what are the scenarios that I need to solve on a daily basis? Hey, Jackson. And so the one that comes to mind, I was thinking about this morning. The one that comes to mind is, I don't want to just like group it into this very vague client intake process, because my intake process probably looks different than everyone else's. But what I want to do, I've been toying with the idea of having I like the idea of custom GPTs, but the only downside to custom GPTs, that the ones that you create inside of ChatGPT, like if you go to ChatGPT and you go to explore GPTs, these are all custom GPTs, right? You can make your own or whatever. So I'm using this one this morning, this power prompt generator. The problem with this is that they cannot be set up dynamically, meaning that I want to automate the process of creating new ones, because what I want to do is create a GPT for each of my clients, but I don't want to set it up manually. I want this to happen automatically. So at a minimum, if it's possible, and it should be, I want to have my own personal assistant GPT that I send an email to. This is the other thing I'm tinkering with today, is that when we use custom GPTs, we get this nice, chat GPT interface with all of the streaming output and all of that kind of stuff. But when you build custom assistants, right, when we get into the custom assistants, we get that nice interface sort of in the playground, but these are designed to be interacted with via the API. So the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to come and log back into ChatGPT to interact with this. I mean, I can, and I do. But once you have a whole bunch of GPTs, it gets annoying. You got to go find them and search for them and then have them interact with each other. And like, it works good, but it doesn't, I'm adapting my workflow specifically for this. And I want to circle back and have this adapt to my workflow specifically. So I want to be able to interact with this probably either over email, which I'm going to start with today just because I want to, proof of concept, or Slack. Those are the two that I'm thinking. And probably both, because there'd be some scenarios where I want to be able to say, hey, personal assistant, whatever that looks like, kick off this process, like add a new client. That's my use case today. Add a new client. And so when I add a new client, I want it to go out, scrape the client's website, maybe even some social media stuff like LinkedIn or something. Like, what can you tell me about this person? I want it to automatically create a custom assistant for me that starts to collect that customer's information for me specifically. And then when and this is my goal, it'll be tied to their email or something like that. And then when I have my kickoff meeting with that client, when the transcriptions come in, they will also be added automatically to that custom GPT. So when I'm generating business process documents or proposals or any of that kind of stuff, I have a custom GPT that is just specific to that client that I can further refine and tune and use for their purposes. And I do a little bit of this manually right now, so I wanted to see if I can kick this off. I want to start to automate this process a little bit. So this is where I'm going to start. I'm just going to say this is, we're going to start with an email webhook, because this is the first way I want to interact with this GPT. So I'm just going to say, we'll just call this Aaron's personal assistant. And I'm sort of proof of concepting this on the fly here. This is not pre-scripted or anything. We're just making this up as we go. So personal assistant inbox. This is the inbox for my personal assistant right here. And we're going to copy that address to the clipboard. And so it's going to give us this email. I don't care what the email looks like. I'll jump over to my email and we'll say testing. This is a test email, so we can have a look at what that looks like. So that should come in anytime. Maybe I have to make this live. Let's do run once. And we'll send that email again. Test email. Whoop. This is a test. I just want to send. I wonder if I got the address wrong. Is it open source? What do you mean by open source? What specifically? Is got open source? This isn't open source yet. I'm still building it. This is brand new. Okay, so the email came in. Tells me it came from me, so that'll be important. And then text content, HTML content. Probably what we'll do is just use the text content, because we'll split based on my my signature. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll split based on my signature and just grab the first little bit of text. All right, so what we're going to do, let's tie in the custom assistant now. It's not going to do anything at first. Yeah, it was me sending an email from my account into Make. It just took a second, so I imagine there's like a queue there or something. Probably took a second. So let's tie in that assistant right now. I want to message an assistant, not create a completion. Create a completion is going to go to ChatGPT, just their generic API. I want a specific assistant. So if I click on that, I'm already connected to OpenAI. And the one is Aaron's assistant, GPT-4 mini, that's fine. Role is user, that's fine. I got to think about these prompts. This is the part where this is the hard part of designing some of these systems, is thinking about, like, what do I need this to do? So let's just circle back. The whole goal here is that this custom assistant is going to sort of be the kickoff point for a bunch of different actions. And so I might send it an email and I want it to be like, create a new client profile, or maybe I'll send it an email and I'll say, or Slack, maybe a Slack message to create this task for me. I want to start to tie together the different, pieces. Hannah says, can you please record this? I'm in Word and I'd love to watch this later. I will pull down the live and put it on my YouTube. So if you go over to YouTube, there's a link in my bio. You can click on the YouTube link there. If you follow me there, I will pull this live down and put it there later. And then you can go check it out. So I have a couple of use cases. Like I use Notion a little bit for my personal task management, and I'd like to make that a little bit smarter. I've used lots of other systems. I've used Asana, I've used Clubhouse, I think it's called Shortcut now. I don't want something overly complex. Notion just kind of works for what I do right now. But the idea being that like, I want to be able to forward an email to this thing and have it know what to do with that email. Maybe even like draft a reply or so just thinking right now, there's two use cases. The first one is I want it to create a client profile, and what that will do is it will probably create a record in my Notion that's like a project or something. And then the next thing it will do is like create a custom assistant that scrapes the client website and preloads it with that information. If I can get that far, and then the next step after that would be when I have a meeting with the client, I'm using some like AI note taker thing or whatever. When that meeting's finished, that will just automatically go into the like, I'll get an email from my from the note taker, Otter or whatever I'm using, and it'll automatically get forwarded into this assistant, and the assistant will just know what to do with it. That's pretty complex. There's a little bit of work that needs to be done there, but if I can get that far, that's going to go a long way, because then what that means is I've got this assistant that I can start asking questions about this client. Like we talked about this thing, or I can start to say like, based on what you understand about my business model and now about this customer and what we've discussed, help me come up with an action plan draft for this customer. And that'll save me a lot of time, because I end up repeating. Every time I meet with customers, I end up repeating a lot of information, rebuilding a lot of this from scratch. So if I can automate some of that process, I think this will be pretty good. So right now we just have this assistant. You're just a helpful assistant, and answer questions to the best of your ability. Actually, let's just say you're a helpful assistant. Just respond with, how can I help you? Save that for now. I need the assistant ID. Where's that going to be? Right there. Copy that. Let's connect this. Oh yeah, we've got that connected already. The message is just going to be the email. Actually, before we send this, I said I was going to split based on that. So let's actually add a module in the middle. And that's going to be, is it text parse? Text parser. I can match a pattern. I think, I think actually I don't need text parser. I think I just need to set a variable. Let's go back. Remember, what I want to do is I've got this email coming in, and I don't want the whole thing. I don't want my signature. I just want everything before my signature. And I use these two little, there's two little hyphens and then a new line there. So I want to split on that. So I think I can say the variable name is just going to be email text, and the value, I think we can go split, and then text, and the delimiter or the separator is going to be, we'll try this. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to go hyphen, hyphen, backslash n. I'm skeptical, but we'll try that. So if I just grab this output, this text here, just grab that whole thing, because then we can just test that module a couple of times. Run this module only. There's my text. Oh, interesting. It put everything on one line. Let's go. Run that once. Says this one needs, we'll just send in the just for now. There's a little tinkering that goes into getting this set up sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to send another email. I need that. It was make.com. Nope, not that one. Just grab that, this one here. Grab this email address. Copy that. I should set this up as a contact. That'd probably be the smart thing to do here. And this is a test. Testing. Send. This took a minute last time. I'll just give this a second to get the email in there. There we go. It sent it off to our assistant. Not sure how that's going to go. What I wanted to see is what our output looks like. And that did not work. So, probably because of the new line. So I'll try a extra, or I wonder if I can go, let's see if there's a special character in. Oh, they have a new fill by AI thing. That's interesting. Where are our special, there's team name, date and time, new line. That's what we want right there. I knew it was in there somewhere. So it should go hyphen, new line. Let's try that one more time. So we'll run that again. And we'll just reply to this one. Testing again. Send. Let that email come in. If it'll split on that character, then we can send just the text from the email into the chat GPT and not my signature. My signature doesn't need to be in there. Sort of like reduce the number of tokens. This isn't going to be a high cost GPT anyway, or high cost operation. It should be fairly straightforward, but we'll just be efficient. And so it did split. Okay, so what we need to do is it sent that in as an array. So I need to, what are my array operations here? I want to select the first element. Let's try their AI feature here. Splits on the text based on the hyphens and new line, and then selects the first array element. I don't know if that's going to work. I have no idea what this is going to do. I've never used it before. Okay, so first is what we want. That's perfect. That's all I wanted to know. First. See, we're learning together here. Hey, funny front man. We're building out, we're proof of concepting a personal assistant idea that I had working on my own business today. So let's try this one more time. Spin this up, run once. Reply to this again. This is a test. We just want to get this email hooked up. So I'm sending an email into my workflow. And the idea is that I can forward an email into this, or I can kick off, probably have this connected on email and Slack. And I want sort of one central assistant that's just my personal assistant that is programmed to do a few different actions just to streamline my intake process. So if I get a transcription from a meeting I've had with a client, I want that to come in. I want to just be able to, I want to automatically forward it to this address. And then my personal assistant will have already at some point created a custom assistant, like a ChatGPT assistant in my system, and we'll already have data on that client. We'll automate that process. And then when I have meetings with that person, then those transcriptions will also just automatically go in there. So then when I'm generating, process documents and stuff, I'll have an assistant there that's already aware of those details. Because when you have even just, I don't know about y'all, but when I've got even 5 or 6 clients I'm juggling at once, and I'm like, okay, what am I forgetting here? I sat down this morning and I cleared out my backlog, my task list. I had a blank, my to-do column was blank, and I'm like, all right, 10 minutes ago, I swear I was just thinking of 7 things I needed to get done today, and now I can't think of a single one of them. So clearing out the to-do list was very helpful. Cassie asks, so you want to extract data from your transcript received from an email into a client profile. So that would be step 2 of this whole thing. The first thing I want to do is, if I think the ideal scenario for me would be if somebody books a call, if they're a brand new client and somebody books a call with me, if they have like a business domain or something, I want it to automatically forward into this assistant, and the assistant is going to go out and look at their website, pull all that information, put it into a custom GPT, and then send me a summary of what their business does. That'll just save me, it's not a lot of time, half an hour. I usually go out and scan their website, read a few blog articles, understand what this person does before I get into this kickoff call with them. So it'll just automate that process. And then after we have the call, so I'll have a custom GPT assistant set up for them specifically, automatically. And then after I have the call with them, when say like Otter AI or something like that emails me the transcript, that's going to automatically get forwarded into this and get assigned, go into the same assistant as sort of meeting notes. And then in that way, after we've had maybe a kickoff, and then maybe if we do like a second discovery call or something, I've got everything in one place, and then the assistant is aware of my processes and my approach to things, and then is basically trained on the customer information so that collaboratively I can say, all right, you know that I like to do things in this way. Let's formulate a proposal for this client, or like a draft, right? I never have my AIs just like talk to my clients, because that falls into the category what I call high risk scenarios. Um, I think your relationships are important. Your relationship with your customers is important. So just arbitrarily handing that over to an AI system, even a really well-trained AI system, is still risky. So I want to be in that process. I'm fine with it drafting an email or drafting emails within my fixed onboarding process or something, so I can go in and tweak things. But I'm starting to. I saw this today. It was actually another creator on TikTok here that it was called, not unicorn. It was called mermaid diagrams or something like that. And I'm like, I have been looking for this, like a diagram generator that I can use text, because then this is, especially if there's this customizable, because this is a big part of my processes, trying to take some of these more complex processes and break them down into ways that make sense for my clients, that don't just like sound like a bunch of jargon. There's a lot of work that goes into that for me, because I can get jargony sometimes. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to adjust my stream. If the stream gets laggy at all, will you just drop a comment? I realized I'm on my Wi-Fi. I'm not plugged into my wired connection. It seems to be okay. Seems to be holding steady. But if it gets laggy at any point, please let me know. I'm tempted to try and plug that cable in right now, just because I had some issues with my Wi-Fi the other day, but we seem to be holding steady with a pretty solid bit rate here. So that's my thinking here. If I can get an email going in, oh hey, solve my API problem, now I'm ready to start. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'm sorry I couldn't have been more help in that process. The internet is a complicated piece of machinery sometimes. Okay, so if we can get the email going in, then the hard part will start. So, and then ChatGPT came back and said, how may I help you? Because that's what it's trained to do right now. So then what we want to do is, just reply to this email. That's the goal. The assistant is going to be very simple. And so I guess what I'm fleshing out is like, once I get an email going into an assistant and I've got it programmed with a couple of actions, I want it to do certain things. So if I ask it to summarize an email for me, I don't want to just, I want to have visibility on this. I want to understand that it worked, that the task was complete. I want to understand, it's sort of like a check-in. I want my AI to check in with me because I don't want to just automatically, like, I don't want to operating autonomously in the background without me knowing what it's doing, at least at key intervals. And so part of the setup might be the AI drafts an email for me and then it sends me a Slack message. I might want it to do those two things. Or if I say, hey, generate this whatever, that might be, maybe it's a process document or something, and it doesn't have the assistant should be trained enough that it's like, if it doesn't have all of the information it needs in order to fully complete that, then it's going to reply to me via email and be like, this is the information I need. Fill out this questionnaire and I will complete the task for you. Raslam says, thanks, man. I feel really overwhelmed. Don't know where to start. I totally get that. Just drop a comment in here, or feel free to message me again. But if you want to drop a comment in, what is your use cases? Are you trying to, I would recommend, if you're just new to AI, if you're just starting out brand new, one of the things I would recommend for you is like, it does feel super overwhelming with all of the different options that you have available to you, all of the different tools. And then there's all of these creators on TikTok, talking about the plethora of different generators and prompts and all of this different stuff. So if I was just to give you one piece of advice to get started, if you're just trying to start out with automation and AI, is just ignore all of the tooling for a minute and just think about one problem. Think about a very specific problem that you're wanting to solve, and just use that as an excuse to automate that process. So a good example right here, I'm just building a very simple automation. Again, a lot of my automations look like this. They're 4 nodes, or 5. I have a few that branch out and they get more complicated, but I typically don't. I keep mine very simple because the more complex something is, the more brain power it requires. When it breaks, it's a lot of work to get it fixed. So just start simple. Start very, very simple and just be like, okay, for this, what I want to do is if I put something in this row in the spreadsheet, I want it to take that, process it with AI, and put it back in the next cell, maybe a summary or something, right? Just start small because that'll force you to problem solve your way through some of the little challenges that come with that. If you're having to process text, if you're having to like deal with an array, if you're having to try and fine tune the prompt in your custom assistant or whatever that looks like. So just start small, if that's helpful. And we just tried this out today. We were just trying to figure out how to parse this text here. And we noticed that in make.com, they have this one little tab at the top that's a little AI tab. So you can, if you're in there, you can, describe what it is you're trying to do and it'll spit out a little function for you or whatever, if that's helpful. These little AI tools everybody's adding. Some of them are helpful, some of them aren't. Okay, so we've got this really basic assistant. It doesn't do anything yet. It just says, how may I help you? Which isn't entirely helpful yet. Oh, if you'll bear with me a second, I see I see that bit rate dropping every once in a while. I'm just going to plug this cable in, so try and reach around my computer. 1 second. I had some Wi-Fi issues the other day. Hopefully that doesn't affect our stream. All right. So now that we've got this, again, my assistant doesn't do anything yet, but I want it to, with a webhook I can respond. I guess send an email is what I want. Save message after sending, no. 2, the recipient is going to be the original sender, that's going to be me. And then the subject, I think I can just use the same subject and that should reply in a thread. Content type. HTML might be fine. We'll just test that out. I don't think it matters. We could have our custom assistant respond with, I'll probably always use a text response. We'll experiment with this. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. And then the content is just going to be our GPT response. So this is about as basic as it gets. Tom Tim says, I might have something interesting. Oh, Lisa Marie, what is the plan to make? I'm experimenting with a custom, I'm experimenting with the idea of building out a personal assistant, but one that will help me with onboarding. Instead of using, say, ChatGPT interface with this, I tend to use OpenAI assistants, which are basically the same thing, but you access them through the API instead of the ChatGPT website. The only downside with that is you don't get that nice interface. This interface is fairly comfortable to use and it's intuitive. Working with the API, you need some sort of way of actually interacting with it. And so my thought is to wire in the bot, the personal assistant, into my process, which will mean either communicating with me over email or over Slack or both. So that's kind of the idea. I want to be able to email into this assistant and say, set up a new client profile for this email. Or actually, this is my actual workflow, is if somebody books a call with me and they're a brand new client, then I want the first thing, I want the email to automatically come into this assistant. The assistant is actually going to spawn a new assistant and then feed that assistant a bunch of information about that client from their website, maybe their LinkedIn profile, whatever I can find. And then secondary to that, if I, after the kickoff meeting with that client, when the transcript comes in, that will also automatically go into that custom assistant just for that client. So for each client over time, I will have a custom assistant. I think that makes sense. I thought about doing it in one assistant, but I think because some clients' use cases get really complex and they have documents and all of this different stuff, and I want to be able to have an assistant just for a client, but I don't want to set it up manually. That's the problem I'm trying to solve. So we're just prototyping this. This is just a concept at this point in time. And all we've done right now is connected my email. So right now I can send an email into this. It goes into ChatGPT and then it emails me back. So that'll be my sort of primary, my primary way of interfacing with this right now. And then once it gets working good, then I'll add in Slack as well. We'll add in Slack as maybe it'll message me if, I think right off the bat, my first task is going to be for it to just set up a new client profile. Frank says, this is just for automatic email respond. No, I don't want GPTs auto responding to emails. This is actually responding to me. Let's test it out. What we're building out today is this actual assistant part. We'll come back to that in a second. So I'll send myself another email into my assistant. And we'll just say test email, just to make sure that it works. And what we want from this is a response. So that should go in. Our email webhook here should receive the email. It should put it into our custom assistant. There it goes there. And then it's going to reply to me. Now, the magic is going to be in the custom assistant, right? This will be the part that will take some tinkering. So it says it sent an email. I'll go check my email now. Move those tabs around. We look at the inbox. There we go. ChatGPT says, how can I help you? I might want to set up a separate email account, but this will do for now. This works. So that's step one. Now the magic is going to be in this custom assistant because I want to start setting up custom actions. So I'm gonna need to start setting up like some logic in my assistant, and this is kind of the tricky part. I thought about using maybe VoiceFlow because it's really good at this, but I don't have a paid account with them yet, and I just have like I have too many software subscriptions, so I don't need another one today. We'll come back to that. We'll see if we can pull this off with this custom assistant today. Let's see how far we get with that. So I think the response format of text is probably fine. What I'm going to do is we'll dial into this assistant a little bit. Actions, the functions is going to be the main thing. There's this thing, and if you're not familiar with functions, you can do this with both custom GPTs as well as custom assistants. In custom GPTs, they call them actions, and in custom assistants, they call them functions. I don't know why. Or maybe there is, no, it is functions, yeah. So basically we want the GPT to be able to act on our behalf. And the way it's going to do that is through some kind of API. So let's just set up the most basic, let's just set up like the most basic version of this. Eventually I'm going to want this to scrape an entire website, so we might use the third-party service for that. I don't know yet what that looks like. But for now what we're going to do is we're going to go, I've got my errands assistant. I want to set up one more assistant right now. We'll just do that really quick. Come back to assistants. We'll just click on create assistant, and we'll just say, we're just going to call this our temporary website scraper. I'm calling it temporary because this is not going to be permanent. I apologize if that text is really tiny. How do I get rid of that sidebar? I don't know if I can. If I bump that up, that goes away. Sorry if that's hard to read. That's as good as that gets on this particular site. So our temporary website scraper is, oh, actually, you know what? We don't even need an assistant for this. All we need is a workflow. Let's do it this way. We could break this down into multiple tasks and make it more complex if we wanted to, but I think probably we can just do it with, yeah, let's do this. Okay. We're formulating a plan. Yeah, you could use, Raslam says, use Apify. I could do that. I would even recommend that, because if you just want to pay for somebody else to scrape that data for you, then perfect. That's a really great use case. I tend to try and see if I can build it on my own. Maybe because I'm stubborn or I'm cheap. I might be stubborn and cheap. I might be both those things. But I've absolutely used Apify. Or Apify, APIify, whatever that's called. Let's just see how far we can get with this. I think what we're going to do, I'm going to add a function. I think, what do we have for examples here? Get weather, get stock price, get traffic. So how this works is, in the custom actions for a GPT, you can determine the URL endpoint. And I'm not 100% certain if that's how this works with functions, because this has actually changed since the last time I used it. Get traffic. I assume it has to reach out to a third-party service, but I don't see exactly where it's doing that. Location is required. So the example that they're showing us here is to get the traffic. Gives current traffic conditions at a given area. And then the inputs are going to be the city and the state, which are both required. Location is an object which has city and state. Let's just try this out. We'll figure out. Every once in a while we can click on. My problem is. Oh yes, that's exactly what's going to happen here. I might need to rethink my my strategy here, because it's going to want our external system to do this. So I know for sure. if we use a custom, I know in a custom GPT, like if we go over to Chat GPT, if we created a new GPT over here, if we went to explore, create, when you create a custom GPT, if you add in an action here, the cool thing about this is, let's use this example, is you can specify a URL in this action. All of this just, this is called a schema. And all that is it's a specific format or a structure that tells the GPT what data it needs to perform the action and what to give back, and then more importantly, where to get it. So you have the servers parameter where you can pass in the URL. And the cool thing about that is, I actually have another video on this in my profile. You can go check out. You can plug in the webhook endpoint for a make.com scenario into this. And when you ask the GPT, well, in this case, it's weather, you can say, hey, what's the weather? It will hit that endpoint. It'll pass in the data that you've specified in the parameters section, and then it will bring back the response. So the flip side of this is we're not using a custom GPT, we're using an OpenAI assistant. And in this case, we're giving it access to a function. But now the problem is that I still want to do this in an automated way. I'm not doing this in code because I'm in a make.com scenario. So when I look at the documentation, what it's saying here is that we need our code to be sort of, I think, paying attention. We would be using the SDK or the programming toolkit to talk to ChatGPT, and instead of giving us the response, it's going to give us back an instruction. It'll give us back a specific response that says, I need you to run this function. We're sort of, by defining the functions within assistants, we're telling we're telling the OpenAI assistant what functions it has access to. So we'll need to figure out how to wire that into our workflow. Here, let me get caught up on my comments here. Too many things going on. Let me see. What do you think of Vivek and Musk talking about H-1B visas? I mostly don't have any thoughts on that. Yeah, I don't have an opinion or thoughts on that particular topic. Hey, Poopstick, I'm trying to make a personal assistant today. That's kind of the goal here anyway. I've got a custom OpenAI assistant that I'm interacting with via email. And I want to give it access to some more complex functionality. But what I need to work around is that if I was using a custom GPT, ChatGPT will call this. If I give custom actions to a ChatGPT, a custom GPT, it will hit those endpoints for me, which is great. I wish that was baked right into custom assistants, because that would allow me to automate a lot of this right out of the gate. But what they do is they give us custom functions. And so what I need to do is figure out how to get my infrastructure to, I think there's actually a way to do this in make.com now that I think about it. Have I done any certifications throughout my career? No. I studied for a long time for a bunch of AWS certifications, and then I just never pulled the trigger on that. And I probably should. I should still go back and do that. I think certifications are good. They show that you've worked through a particular topic. But if you only have a certification and you don't have any experience, you don't have any actual work experience with a particular in a particular field, I don't think the certification's enough. or maybe it'll get you in the door. I guess I'll say that's fine. If it gets you in the door, then that's fine. But don't just go out and get a certification without actually getting some practical experience in that field. And that could be just like an open source project, a side project, something you just think is interesting, something you can show off. If you go get a certification, make sure you have a few projects you can show off at the same time. Okay, so I think there's actually, let me just double check here. Poopstick says, I recently got an internship, applied for soft dev position. They put me on UI UX design. Interesting. My advice for you is just do your best in that position and potentially, keep building goodwill, meaning like do a good job. And while you're building experience in the UI side of things, which is that's good experience to have, not exactly what you were looking for, but also keep looking, right? Keep your doors open, keep your options open. I think I'm not a UI or UX designer, but I have experience in that because I think having a broad range of skills is important, or it can be useful. So I believe there's a feature in OpenAI that will allow us to, I'm just tickling the back of my memory. I played with this a while ago. Let me see if I can find it. We'll just unlink this for a minute. Do I think you should leave if you get a better internship midway? That's going to be up to you. I think if it matches what your goals are, probably. Always, do so amicably with notice and all those types of things. But yeah, I would keep pursuing what you were interested in. Again, don't rule out the one that you're in because internship's not forever and it will be a good experience, right? Let's look back in the OpenAI because I believe there's a way to do this. To call a function. I make MVPs. Can you post these to YouTube so I can rewatch? I do post them to YouTube. I definitely will. One of the problems with some of these tools is that things change so quickly that I have to relearn some of these tools from time to time. I can do an HTTP request. There's a function in here. So I believe there's a function in make.com where I'm not working with, I'm working with a custom assistant, which is something you set up in the developer console in OpenAI. And you can only interact with these. You can only interact with these with, what do you call it? Through the API. And actually, now that I think about it, I do remember how this works. We need to set up the function first. So what we're going to do is, let me just turn on my dictate mode here. A function that will take the URL or domain of a website and return a summary of that website. We'll see what that does for us. I don't know your name. GPT Mini is not so bright on the AI leaderboard. Is there a specific reason you use this model? Because it's good enough and it's cheap. What I'm doing doesn't require it doesn't require like a doctorate. If you're giving a GPT simple decisions like decide between A, B, and C, you don't need the best and brightest model. You can just keep it simple. And I can always change it later if it's not doing a good job. The BGB says, what application is this? I believe we were looking at make.com, which is an automation platform. So I believe now that I have the function set up, I'm just going to save. We'll scan this real quick. I apologize that text is so small. I can't make it bigger on If I try and bump that up, it'll start hiding things on me. So the name of the function is summarize website. It's going to take the domain of the website. The properties are URL, include image, max length. I actually don't want those. I'm going to save that, but we'll come back to our function and we'll just adjust this. We don't actually want these. Just the URL. That's all. The string URL or domain of the website to summarize. Save that. And I got an error. I've got an issue with my, because I probably have, required fields. So we'll clean up that schema. There, that's updated. Now that I remember how this works, refresh my old noggin here. If I come into my chat GPT module, and I believe if we go, let me just see if it's under advanced settings. I might set this up one more time because I believe the function should be in here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this module, delete that. And then what I'm going to do is re-add message and assistant. I'm going to select the Aaron's assistant. There. That's what I wanted right there. So what it's done, and this is a feature of make.com, one of the things I like about Make. I'm sure other platforms do this too, but I really like this, is we've set up a custom function now. If you're just joining me, my goal here is I'm building out a custom assistant that is going to, I can send it an email, or actually my goal here is if somebody books an appointment, when the appointment confirmation comes in for me, it's automatically going to forward it to my custom assistant, this one here. The custom assistant is going to evaluate the email domain of that customer that I'm having a meeting with. And it's going to go out and scrape their website. And then it's going to put that information, it's going to build, it's a little bit meta. My custom assistant is going to build another custom assistant specific for that client. And it's going to put their website information in there. That's our task today. And then once it's done that, it's going to email me a confirmation. And then once that's done, I'll be able to interact with that new assistant. I haven't figured that part out yet. If I say, hey, I want information about this customer, I'll have to figure out how I'm going to make that work. I don't know yet. We'll figure that out when we get there. One step at a time. If we get it scraping a website and giving us data back, if we get data back, that'll be enough. So because we're working with a custom assistant, now that we've set up the function, now remember, functions, giving functions is basically telling the custom assistant, here's a piece of functionality that you can use. This is at your disposal. So I'm going to update my instructions now. Okay, I'm going to say, you are a helpful assistant. Here are your instructions. Okay, and then we'll say, when you are provided with the domain or URL of a website, you are to use the function to retrieve information about that website. So now we've trained our custom assistant in a really basic way so that it knows it has access to this summarize website function. And so this will get a little bit more sophisticated as we go, but we'll start with that. This is just first steps. So now the cool thing about that is as soon as we hook up, as soon as we open up that custom assistant, we connect to that custom assistant in our make.com scenario. Now make.com wants to know the URL where we can fulfill that custom function. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up another scenario. So what I'll do is I'll just pop that open in a new tab. We'll create a brand new scenario. This time we're going to use a webhook, but we're going to use a custom webhook. Let's create a new one. We'll call this website summarizer webhook. Won't worry about IP restrictions just yet. Copy the address to the clipboard, and now we put the URL of that new scenario into the URL for this function. Now again, make.com knows that this function needs a URL because we defined that. When we set up our function back here, we said there's this URL parameter. This function will get it will receive a URL or domain of a website and return a summary from that. So that's what our new scenario has to do. And the parameter is URL. So what our schema has done is it has defined the parameters that this function will take. That's how make.com knows that URL. If we had additional parameters in that schema, there would be additional input parameters for this particular function. And those will be passed in to our new scenario. So when we execute this new scenario that is we'll call this our website summarizer, when this webhook is triggered, it's going to pass that URL in. Let's test this out right now. Hey, Omar, yeah, I'm going to, TikTok will let me download the live recording afterwards, and I will upload it to my YouTube. So make sure you're following me on YouTube, and I'll upload the recording after that. And you can go back and review it there. So I know this is getting a little advanced, but just if you bear with me, because this is like a secret power. This is like the secret power of ChatGPTs and custom assistants is the ability to call your own functions. I'm going to be doing a tutorial on APIs here in the near future. But if you can just understand the power of webhooks in make.com and then tying that into your GPTs, that unlocks a whole bunch of doors. That unlocks a lot of power. Because now you can start to delegate. Think of functions in ChatGPT as delegating. Right? When you set up a function or an action, if you set up a custom action in your custom GPT, or you set up a function in your custom OpenAI assistant, think about that as delegating. So you have this ChatGPT or this custom assistant that is just, it's kind of like a personal assistant. It's kind of like your personal helper, your business helper, okay? But you're empowering that helper to delegate tasks to other systems. That's what those functions are. That's what those custom actions are. You're programming that assistant, your assistant, to say, all right, when you are faced with this particular task, these are the tools that are available to you. And the examples they give you in there are like the weather, right? When you are asked about the weather, call this endpoint. Go out on the internet to this exact location and pass in the city or the details that it requires, and you'll get back the weather. That way, because I mean, ChatGPT doesn't know where the weather is where you are, but it can reach out to, weather.com or some other API, some other endpoint. And the internet is full of APIs. There's APIs all over the place. And if you get savvy enough, if you understand how you can build your own APIs that are custom to your specific business functions, that's the power of getting into some of this stuff. Even just somebody mentioned Apify. I don't know how to pronounce this. But this is a great resource right here. You do have to pay for lots of these. But this is a platform. This Apify platform is where people have built APIs and then they're a pay per use. So if you come in here and you say Facebook, if there's something you want to do with Facebook, you can search in here, Facebook post scraper, comment scraper, group scraper. There's lots of things you can do. And then based on whichever one it is, there will be a pay per usage for this. And then if you can connect that to your GPTs, now you're giving your GPTs the ability to go get Facebook posts or something like that, delegating those tasks. Because your GPTs don't know anything about Facebook posts. But if you give them an action or a function, it's like you're giving them the power to delegate that responsibility. And it is a little like there is some complexity to it. But if you can wrap your head around it, it starts to unlock a lot of power. So again, if you're just joining us, if you're just joining in on the live, what we're doing here is today what I'd like to do is get to the point where if somebody books an appointment with me, that email will automatically be forwarded to this custom assistant. And this custom assistant is going to reach out to your website, scan it, summarize it, and it's going to build a custom assistant specifically for your business, put all of that website information in there, and then it's going to send me a confirmation as a start. That's the first thing this is going to do. This is going to save me about half an hour to an hour, especially if you have a blog, if you have a lot of stuff and you reach out to me and you say, I need some help with maybe automations, or we're curious about AI, or we're looking for something in our business. I can start with a summary of your business. So going into the first meeting, this has already saved me about an hour. If there are any blog posts of note that I might want to read beforehand, or just so I have an understand what your particular vertical is. And then after we have a meeting, the transcript of that meeting, when it hits my inbox, it's going to be automatically forwarded again to this. And that transcript is going to go again into that custom assistant. So when I start developing a plan, start talking about systemizing some details of your business, or we start talking about different automations, not only do I have a record of it, but I also have a custom GPT that I can interact with that will help me fast track the process of coming up with the best plan for you. This is going to save me. Again, I'm not removing myself from the process. What I'm doing is I'm removing the tedious bits, the time consuming bits. So if we can get that far today, that would be golden. All right, we've set up a custom function. It's going to hit this endpoint. We've got that endpoint in another scenario that's listening. So what we're going to do, we're going to say, we'll just test this out. I'm gonna need to revise this because it will need to trigger based off of an incoming email from an appointment confirmation. But we'll come back to that. What we'll say is, actually, let's do that. I'm going to go fine tune this. I'm going to go fine tune my my assistant. So this is my helpful assistant when provided with the domain or URL. So I'm going to revise this. Let me get my dictation mode going here. When you are provided with the email of a new customer from an appointment confirmation, if the domain of that email is a business domain, extract the domain and use the web to extract the website details about this customer. So we're starting to fine tune our instructions a little bit. This is very, very these instructions are very naive right now because we're just starting to build this out. But we'll start with that. That'll give us a place to start testing this out. So if we now send an email to this, let me just reply. I'm just going to make up, oh, I got a detail state twice. Thank you. Thank you. I think it would have got the point, but that's fine. That's just because I had my my dictation mode on. I try not to type if I don't have to. Let's pick on, who should we, let's just pick on an arbitrary business. If we were going to, let's pretend I booked an appointment with somebody. I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but I do need a domain. Let's just use my domain. That's fine. We'll just say, this is your meeting. You have a new booking with for let's say January 1, 2025. So what I'm hoping it'll do is it'll pull out the domain from this, and then it should call our other scenario. Let's see if this happens. We'll send that off. Oh, you know what? I didn't have this scenario listening though. We'll send in the email. 1 second here. Email text. Get that set up. We'll get this scenario running. We have some module not referencing. Oh, I see, because I removed it. And the result. Run this. Okay, so we have both scenarios running right now. This one's a brand new webhook. It's waiting. And then this scenario is the one that's going to pass the email off to our personal assistant. And then now what we'll do is we'll try this one more time. Reply. Oh, I don't want to send that to me. I want to send that to the hook email. No, I got to go get that. Let's see. Oh, I see. That's where it replied to me. Sent. Nope. Back. I need to set this up as a contact. So that's our hook. New meeting confirmed. I don't know, I'm just making this up. You have a new meeting on January 1, 2025 with, just use my email here. Now again, hopefully it'll pluck this domain out. We'll just send this off. We'll see what happens. Give this a second to come through. All right. Now with luck, this endpoint should be hit. We'll just give ChatGPT a minute to think about that. Oh, it looks like there was an error in our scenario. Let's have a look at that. There's no scenario listening for this webhook. I wonder if we had that shut off. Oh, it must have timed out. I bet that's what happened. Oh no, it says successfully determined. It didn't return a response. I think that's what happened. So now if we go to our next module, I'll just do like a set a variable. And then we can see, no, we should have had URL there. Yeah, so it must have timed out. Let's try that again. All right, it says successfully determined, but I'm not convinced. Fix the module errors. Let me just try it this way. When in doubt, restart the computer. Custom webhook. And we want the website summarizer webhook. Redetermine data structure. I'm just going to copy that URL one more time, as we got the there, now it's listening. Okay. Now we'll go in here. We got to be quick. Hey, Mrs. Jones. All right, let's replace that one more time. I think it was the same. Now let's get this scenario listening. Okay, let's try this one more time. We'll get there. We'll get there. This is all very experimental. Send an email. All right, let's say booking confirmed. We just want to trigger this particular part of the workflow that lets our assistant know that we want it to trigger that custom action. You have a new meeting on January 1, 2025 with, okay, send that. Fingers crossed. And with luck, that one's still listening. It's not going to respond. So this should still probably have an error at some point. But if we're lucky, it should hit that. Yeah, it looks like it. Good. So we just hit that right now. This is going to give us an error again, or maybe ChatGPT will give us something back. So that's fine. So now, unless it kind of went funky again, set variable. There it is, URL. That's what we wanted right there. So now we have the actual URL. The URL, so our scenario was called. Our custom assistant successfully called the right function. And that triggered our second scenario to be called. So we're just going to call this website URL. Now this part gets easy. I am using OBS right now, Mrs. Jones. I've simplified my setup. I'm going through Restream. So Restream recently re-added the ability to integrate with TikTok. It was like broken for a while. And so yes, I am back on. I'm enjoying OBS. I've shut some of the shiny stuff off, but I like it because I actually have a couple of TikTok channels and I can just jump back and forth between them without too much trouble and get to show off my desk. This is a much nicer way to show off your desktop, in my opinion. It seems to work better. Pioneer says, can you give me a quick summary of this project, or is there a vid on your page that explains? Yeah, so I got a few new folks on. So here, apologies, I'll back up. What I'm building out today is we're prototyping a custom assistant, a custom personal assistant. And what I want this to be able to do is when somebody books an appointment and they're not already a client, I want that email to be forwarded automatically into this scenario. So I've got a mail hook set up at the beginning of my scenario. It's going to receive that email, and then it's going to do a couple things. We're setting up some custom assistants, not just a ChatGPT, but a custom assistant in OpenAI. And we're giving it some functions, okay? And I was just describing functions a minute ago. Functions are like, if you think of your assistant, if you have a custom GPT or you have a custom GPT or a custom assistant. Custom GPTs, they call them actions. Custom assistants, they call them functions. But basically what it does, if you think of that entity, that LLM, like a personal assistant, you're giving it the ability to delegate functionality. Because, for instance, your custom assistant doesn't know the weather in Florida right now, but you can give it the ability to talk to a system that does know the weather in Florida. And so you're giving it, it's like you're giving it superpowers. And that's sort of what we're doing. For my particular case, what I want my custom assistant to do is if I just got a calendar booking and I've never worked with this customer before, I want it to look at the email, and if it's a business domain, I want it to go to that person's website and extract the information from their website. And I don't just want it to extract it. I actually want it to set up another custom assistant specifically for that client. And it's going to summarize a bunch of details. It's going to give me a bunch of information about that client ahead of time before our meeting. And even before our meeting, maybe it'll send me an email. It'll say, hey, you got this meeting in 30 minutes. Here's the summary or whatever. And then if I could take a few minutes, here's some blog posts you might want to go read. I do this manually. If I get a meeting with somebody, I'll go look at your website. I'll go look through your blog. I'll read your articles. I'll make sure I understand what it is that you do so I can come into this meeting prepared. So I still want to do that. I just want the Coles notes so I know which areas to focus on. right? And then I might expand this later on to maybe check your LinkedIn or maybe some other profiles, just so I have as much information as I can going into this meeting. And then after we have our kickoff call, and later if we have a discovery call, when those transcripts come in from my AI transcriber, they're going to automatically go into this assistant, and my assistant will know that those transcripts need to go into those custom GPTs. So if I have one set up for you, it'll go into that one. And then that way, when I'm doing business planning, when I'm doing automation planning, I can interact with that GPT or that custom assistant. I can have it draw process diagrams, that kind of stuff. Pint Pioneer says, this is cool. How long has this been in the works? I've been working on this since we started the live about 45 minutes ago. We're just proof of concepting this on the fly right now. We're building this out on the fly together. I was just thinking about this morning. You know, I said when I first hopped on the live, I said, I spend a lot of time working on other people's businesses, right? Work on customer stuff, workflows for customers. And so I was thinking to myself this morning, what would I need for what do I need to do for my business? Like I've got some simple automations that I use all the time for various parts of my processes. But I was thinking, you know what would be really helpful is this particular piece right here. Because I want to sort of spice up my onboarding process. I want to, if somebody books a meeting, I want to be able to come in prepared and fast track that process. Because right now, that's why it's something I really believe in relationships. I really believe in, so I'm bullish on AI, but I'm not bullish on AI replacing relationships, right? Our connections are important. Our relationships with each other are important. And when we collaborate together in business, right, you can't replace that with AI. But we can use AI to replace some of the redundant things that are just like eating up our time and not really adding a lot of value to our business. So me understanding your business is high value time, but me combing through your website looking for the pieces that are important, that's something that can be automated. Hey, Georgia. Google Maps fun. Is Make useful for SaaS or only internal workflows? I think mostly internal workflows. If you were trying to build out a SaaS product, and the problem with something like Make.com is that it's going to get expensive fast. So if you were trying to build out a backend on Make.com, you're going to burn through all your credits. So if we look at this screen, I've got a incoming webhook. I've got setting a variable here. I've got a ChatGPT node, and then I'm sending a response. This is 4 operations, and so every time I run this, it's charging me for 4 operations. And so if you had 100 users, use your app twice a day, you're going to burn through 1,000 operations like that, and you don't get that many on the base plan. It's going to get very expensive very fast. But so there are other Late Node is another one. They charge based on runtime. You use 1 credit for 30 seconds, but they still only allow a maximum of so many operations on each different plan. So if you're building SaaS and this is where most of the low code tools, if you're using like Bubble.io, Retool, Softer, like all of these tools, that's sort of how they're making their money right now, is they're getting you in the door on how easy it is to drag and drop together a little bit of an app. But as soon as your app grows and you actually have people using it and using up all those back-end operations, right? Then you start paying. And you're all of a sudden you're in their enterprise plan. And that's not to say that that's more expensive than hiring a development team, because software engineers are super expensive. So it's probably still worthwhile. But for me personally, when I've got something that needs a lot of operations, like if I'm processing dealer inventory for a car dealer or something, 250 vehicles, and there's a whole bunch of processing that needs to happen, I'll typically do that in some other tool, Jupyter Notebook or something. So is it Pato Abdus? I know nothing about coding. I'm a designer. Just want to see you're doing great. Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. Pint Pioneer, do you have any any servers on-prem that you could use for this, maybe replace GPU with different. I use serverless a lot. If you're a developer, I would use like Google Cloud Serverless, or I personally use AWS Lambda just because it's cheap and easy. On-prem, and you mean, so do you mean for an open source LLM specifically? I tend to use, maybe replaces GT with a different open source LLM. I tend to use like Hugging Face, LLMs of Hugging Face, and I still pay for like serverless. There's a few, I can't remember the name of the service right now. When I need to process some data, especially if it's like private data and I don't want it going into OpenAI, or there's restrictions in my contract that won't allow me to use OpenAI or some other system. I can't push that data into a third-party system. Then I will typically spin up a GPU server on like DigitalOcean and use like a model of Hugging Face or something like that. I do have a desktop with a pretty good GPU in physically at my home that I use from time to time. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward to just spin something up for an hour and then shut it down. I think it costs a couple dollars. Gopal says, not many people grasp how expensive make.com gets over time. Agreed. Again, for just low operation stuff, it works great. For high operation stuff, definitely the cost gets to a point sometimes where it makes more sense to be in another system. Omar, what did you say about car inventory? So I'll show you, actually, we'll just take a little detour here, 1 second. So this is the scenario that I have for processing inventory for a car dealership. It's a bit of a prototype. Well, we actually have used it. So inventory pipeline. It looks like this. This isn't even the most complex of the scenarios that I built, but this could run every day for a car dealer. And so there's, just count them out. I think there's 24, 25 nodes in here. So you think, well, make.com charges you for every one of those operations. Or what do you get on a base plan? Make.com's at 1,000 operations, 10,000? I forget what it is, 22,000 or something like that. So if you have 20, let's say there's 20 operations here and 200 cars, you're going to hit 4,000 operations just like in one go. So you're just going to burn up your whole account. So I've done that. And I would still use this, but when I do inventory processing for data, for like if the inventory is changing every day, I'm not using make.com. I will use a Jupyter notebook and just program it. Mario says, greetings, recommendations for accounts payable invoice processing. So Mario 007. So the way I do this, are you needing to process the invoices inbound, or are you needing to automate the process of invoicing your clients? Pint Pioneer, missed 3 days, the free tier days of my AWS account. You could always start another one. Let's change your email. Used to use Linode from time to time. I haven't used Linode a ton. Why don't you use Metalama? I do sometimes. I'll pull it down off Hugging Face and use it, but yeah, they all do sort of the same thing. None of my, I'm not trying to eke the, I'm not trying to eke the maximum intelligence out of my LLMs. Honestly, if people come in, there's a video in my, I just did one video today on the complexity framework. So if you know me, you will understand that the tasks that I'm giving to LLMs are not complex, and they're low risk. They're just like, here's 3 options, pick the best one. I'm not typically asking ChatGPT for like high level thinking. I'm usually asking it for low level thinking because I need the results to be right, like at least 99% of the time. Okay, what does this automation do? Oh, this one's for inventory processing. I didn't even mean to open this up. We're not going to look at it. All it does is it processes vehicles and determines the price and summarizes stuff. And yeah, that's not what I wanted to talk about today, so I'll just close that. Yeah, Jupyter Notebooks. If you're not aware of Jupyter Notebooks, all they are is you can use Python to do cool stuff. No, that's horrible. Jupyter Notebooks are nice because they give you these little cells that you can put a little bit of code in, and the code runs, and it might give you a graph or some output, and then you create another cell, And that cell gets to access all of the context from the initial cell. So if you have any variables or output, you can reuse that. And you end up with this interactive, they call them notebooks because you have sort of a running, it's like a script, but there's output at each step. So you can rerun it as a script. It's a data science tool, so you can generate graphs and stuff. But I use them because because I can automate it. I can fully automate that process. But if something goes wrong, I can go in and I can inspect and rerun and tweak things. I use Jupyter Notebooks every day. Gary says, Tegromat changed my life for work. That's awesome. Looks like Salesforce. Not sure what you mean. Sherwin, dang, I scrolled for 5 minutes and you added 100 things. Sorry, Sherwin, we were looking at a totally different we were looking at a totally different scenario. Somebody had asked about an inventory processing, so I apologize for that. I didn't mean to confuse anyone. We're still working on the same thing. Mario, automated. I currently do a lot of manual work, pull info from the invoice, and then enter it into QuickBooks. I think you could probably, I would experiment with that. I really like ChatGPT for document processing. I find it does a pretty good job, especially if you bring the temperature way down. I've done a lot of document processing with ChatGPT, handwritten form processing, lots of things like that. It does a pretty good job. The way I would do that, however, because again, if you, I don't think I have, I do have the picture here. I'll share it with you. This is just a really quick picture of what I call my risk complexity framework. Okay. And all that is to say that if you are looking at how to use ChatGPT in your business, there are two things that matter to me when it comes to how I'm choosing to use this LLM. One is the degree of complexity, and the other one is the degree of risk. Okay. So that's why I say, somebody asked about like, why aren't you using Llama or why aren't you using this? And it's like, because I'm giving my LLMs the least amount of responsibility as possible. And I sort of interface these two on a bit of a, on these two axes to say, okay, this bottom corner, if it's low risk, low complexity, it's 100% probably in a custom GPT or some automated process for me. And then as you move through these, I approach each of these scenarios differently. So if something gets to be high complexity, then I'll start to introduce checks and balances. If it's high risk, anything in the high risk area is basically going to have a human involved. And so for me, that rules out replacing people with like ChatGPT, because replacing your staff with like, how can I replace my staff with AI? That's like, I can't think of anything more high risk in your business, especially if they've been there any length of time at all. You have people who have institutional knowledge, understand your processes, and are creative thinkers, and you're just going to throw that away. That makes no sense to me. Instead, take those high risk scenarios and break them down into even if they're still high risk, make the complexity lower so that you can delegate some of that to AI. And then you need a human in the loop to verify that stuff. Unless you want it to be you, you either want to crash and burn, have a really bad time, or you want to be verifying everything yourself. If you want to take all of the responsibility of all of your staff back onto yourself and be responsible for all of it, then go for it, have fun. But that's not, business is a team sport. Okay. So, yeah. For QuickBooks, for invoice processing, the way I would do that is if you have a bunch of invoices coming in, I would potentially, maybe anonymizing like the business names and stuff, just using the invoice number. What I would do is I would get into a spreadsheet first. I would use ChatGPT or something like it, or some automated workflow to pull that data out and get it into a spreadsheet that I could manually review. And then I would have a second process. Once I verified that that data is correct, I'd have a second automation that would forward it into QuickBooks for me. Unless you can do, another way you could do it is have the automation, put it into QuickBooks, and then send you a list of things for manual review. You could do it that way too. As long as you're in the process, as long as you're manually reviewing what's going in there, and that's saving you all of the typing. Now it turns from a data entry process into a data review process. As long as you're still in the loop, then I would say experiment with that. Okay, just catch up on my comments here. Pioneer says, similar how to R&R Studio looks, great for data analysis. Yeah, right on. Omar, I know it's not the topic for today, but would love to review the inventory automation in another live. Yeah, I will do that. We were working on that a while ago. I'm still working on building out an automated agent for a car dealership. I have a background. I used to work for a software company that was owned by a car dealer conglomerate. It had about 45 dealerships. And so, man, not that I want to wander back into that world because it's awful, but there's just something about the complexity of the problem that I find intriguing. It's just like inventory is just a hard problem, and inventory is a hard problem, and then getting AI to give you the right answer is a hard problem, and just put those together. For some reason, my brain won't let it go. Gary asks, how long have you been using Make? Not that long, actually. I think I ran into Make about a year ago. Daniel, sorry, I just tuned in. Can you give a quick summary about what you're talking about? Sure, really quick review. So my goal today, what I want to accomplish today is I want to, if somebody books an appointment with me, I want the booking confirmation that comes to me to automatically be forwarded into this scenario. So this first node here is my custom mail hook. It's a custom email address that kicks off this scenario. And then it's going to pull out just the text of the email. It's going to push that into my custom assistant. And my custom assistant is going to make a decision. If it's a brand new email, if it's a booking confirmation and I've never seen that customer before, then I want a custom function in my assistant to go out and pull the website information from that customer and put it in and build a brand new custom assistant and put that information in there. So every time I get a new customer, they're getting a custom assistant automatically. I've done this manually with custom GPTs. I now want to replicate this with custom assistants. I want to automate this process so that I have an interactive GPT just for that customer. So if they send me an email, if we have a meeting, my meeting notes, website information, planning documents, any of that stuff can go into one GPT and I can use that GPT or that custom assistant. Now I can give it actions to do business process diagrams, help me build out task lists, different stuff like that. We're just prototyping this. This is brand new. I just come up with this idea this morning. It's been rattling around in my head. I've seen other people do it, something similar to this, or at least talk about it. And I just wanted to put this into practice and be like, all right, let's just start with a custom system that can scrape a customer website. That would be cool. Hey, Mario, you're welcome. MB says, why using a webhook instead of watch email? I don't want to burn up all of the, because I want to push things in. I don't want this to just react to every single email in my inbox. I only want it to react to emails that I send it. I do things the other way. I know some people have set up make.com scenarios where they're like, I just send all my email into OpenAI, and that could be fine. It sounds like we'd have to sit down and really train that LLM to do the right thing with that email. And I'm not there. I prefer to do it the other way where it's like, I don't want to send all my email in. I want to pick and choose the emails that go in. I'll set up rules in my inbox and be like, all right, these go into this scenario. These go into this scenario. And then I have just like fine-grained control, just sort of an inversion of control if you want to think of it that way. All right. Yeah, Omar, we'll come back to that inventory stuff. We'll do that another time. Gary says, in the past, I've been using text parser module, HTML to text. What are you currently using here? So we've got another scenario here where the way this works is the email comes in, we pull out the text, it goes into my GPT. My custom assistant has a custom function that it can call called summarize website. That function is tied to another scenario. We're just building that out right now. And I'll do something very similar. So using text parser module, HTML to text, I think that's the right way to go. That's probably what I'll do here, is just do HTML to text. But I've also, in the past, set up a custom serverless function in Amazon Web Services to convert a website into Markdown. And I might come back and use that. I found that I found that ChatGPT seems to have a better time with my instructions if I write them out in Markdown. If you format things in Markdown, it just seems to really like structured text. It seems to like the structured format better. So we won't necessarily do that today, but I think I'll follow your advice here, Gary, and just use the text parser module for now. But eventually what I'll do is tie into that other function where it's returning a markdown, because I've just found it works better. Right now, let's just tie this together. I'm just going to use get a file. I think this came off of an email. So I'm going to put the protocol in the front because I think I'm going to need it. And then what we're going to do is we'll follow Gary's advice here. For now, it's under the parser, right? Text parser, HTML to text. We're going to pull in the data from this HTML module. And then from here, we're just going to do a webhook response. And that's it. This scenario is the body is just going to be this text. Now, what we could do, I'm just going to save this scenario, and I'm going to publish this scenario. Oh, it says one of my modules is not set up. There, we'll try that. Save, publish. Now that webhook is listening. So now this one's running. We're going to get back that website data. We're not doing anything with it yet. But maybe we'll go in and fine tune our instructions. So, well, let's just see if this works first. Let's run this once. Let's resend this. Okay, I see there's a couple more comments here. I'll come back to that in just a second. So I'm going to go back to my sent emails. I'm going to borrow this again. We'll just reply. Exact same message. Again, the thing that's triggering this is a booking confirmation. And if this does what it's supposed to, it's going to just pull the domain out of this email. And it's going to go visit that website and get some information. So we'll see what happens here. Send that off. Okay, everybody cross your fingers. So now it's going into ChatGPT. I won't be able to see this one run, but that's okay. We'll see if the ChatGPT module, the messaging assistant module, comes back successfully, then we're in a good spot. Oh, and I did connect the email. Yeah, I think we're in a good spot. Probably a good time to answer some questions. So Carlos says, or Carol Souza, can be created in the automation process to check and eliminate hallucinations. I think there's a lot of, I think there are a lot of strategies around that, around reducing hallucinations. I think it, again, to come back to my notion of the risk complexity framework, if you're getting a lot of hallucinations, if you don't want your, if your AI is not giving you the results that you want, you can try and improve the prompt. But if you've been dialing in your prompt and trying to fix it and make it as good as possible, and you're still getting a lot of hallucinations, it might be that you're giving your LLM, you're giving ChatGPT or whatever you're working with, too big of a problem. And so you might want to, like, if you need it to be deterministic, we were just talking about dealer inventory, like car dealer inventory a minute ago. In order for an LLM to be deterministic, meaning to be accurate about something like car dealer inventory, you can't just push the car dealer inventory into the LLM and ask it. You can't just give it, here's a spreadsheet of this dealer's inventory. Find me a cheap red Dodge Ram. It's like you can't, like you might get back a good answer, but in my experience, you're going to get back not a great answer most of the time. And so that's problematic, obviously. So one of the strategies that we can use is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, meaning that you use a vector database to store the inventory. And then you query that ahead of time with some keywords like red, RAM, and then you take the results of that and you put that into the LLM prompt. And then, so if ChatGPT has everything it needs sort of in the prompt, at prompt time, it'll typically do a really good job. If you need more advanced complex queries, that can get challenging. There's a lot of fine-tuning there. But the whole point of that is to say, if you're still getting hallucinations, you might want to take a look at how much complexity there is in what it is you're asking of your automated system. Fran says, dude, I was literally looking for this on Google. Right on. Glad TikTok brought you to us. Kapal says, can I get a document of what you're showing? No, but I'll put the YouTube video. I'll download the live when we're done today, and I'll put it on my YouTube if you want to go check it out. Review what we're doing. I literally just thought of this morning. I thought, you know what? I'm going to jump on live this afternoon, and I'm going to see if I can start to build out a little bit of a custom, a personal assistant here. So if we go have a look now, I just want to see the execution logs on this other. Go back to our website summarizer. Look at the history here. We can see it was successfully executed. Look at the details. Get the file, set the variable, send the response. Looks good. We can go in here and have a look at that too. So here's the text from that particular site. Oh man, there's a lot of text on my site. So that worked. So our custom function, and that was really the goal of what we wanted to do here today, right? If we look at my custom assistant, we've added in a custom function that is going to summarize a website. So now what I might want to do is based on this email address, or maybe even based on the domain name, what I might want to do from here. This is my my website summarizer workflow. It's going to be a sub workflow of this one here, which is Aaron's personal assistant. And again, if we step back for a minute and think about what it is that this assistant is going to do, I want it to be able to summarize. I want to be able to create a custom assistant for each of my customers if they're a brand new customer. I want it to be able to summarize or retrieve and store data from the customer's website in that custom assistant. I want it to be able to retrieve and store meeting notes in that custom assistant. So we've accomplished the one. We haven't created any custom assistants yet, but we did get to the point where we created a function, and now we've given our assistant the ability to delegate that to another scenario. So now what I might want to do from here, and it's sent back the email response to, it's not useful right now, but I mean the pieces work together. This is the process of building out automations, is prototyping out these pieces and starting to build up the complexity. Hey, Bobby. How do you feel about Adobe API PDF extract for parsing data? I haven't tried it. I use ChatGPT for PDF parsing. I've used some custom models too. I've pulled a few off Hugging Face and tried them out. OpenAI works great. I think document processing is one of those underrated cases. Document processing is one of those things that, I mean, again, you don't want to be pushing sensitive data necessarily into ChatGPT. But if you just have like document processing, I've done it with real estate, documents, anything that's structured nicely, I found it works really well. Yeah. One of the automations that I've done that works really well, I did it for a real estate agent. Let me just see here. Have a look at my scenarios again. It wasn't even really complicated. I think it's just, yeah, this one here. Just a listing parser. Not it looks complicated, but it's not really. And the whole idea behind this was giving the agent the ability to just fast tracking some of the process. They were already using Google Drive in their process, and so in this particular case, they just drop a zip file in a Google Drive. It's got a PDF right out of their MLS, and then it's got a bunch of images. And so basically, in the first branch, I unzip that, pull out the images, and I upload them to a free service, and then I store the URL of each of those images in a variable. And then on second branch, I unzip it again, and then I pull out the PDF, and I do a bunch of processing on the PDF using ChatGPT. I don't know why I have 4 ChatGPT nodes here. Upload a file. Oh yes, I upload the PDF file to a specific assistant that's designed for PDF processing. And then at the end, it just summarizes everything and pushes it up into the social media management platform as a draft. It says, here's your draft. Creates a nice little, I think it was Facebook style post with the images and emojis and stuff. If it is sensitive data, then in the software industry, we'll do what's called anonymizing. So what you can do is, if the document's full of sensitive data, then just don't push it up into ChatGPT. Bottom line. So if you are able to push up something that doesn't have, if you can give it a unique identifier of some kind, so you keep your sensitive data over here in your private system, you give it a unique identifier so that you can pass something into ChatGPT with that unique identifier, and there's no personally identifiable information. Then when you get a response back, you take and match those identifiers back up so you can match the response back to your sensitive information. That process, we call that anonymizing the data. If it's just a PDF full of sensitive data, you might want to look at an on-premises system, right? Using a model or doing something on your personal computer that's not accessing cloud resources or sending it up into ChatGPT. Yeah, and there's that's a little bit more involved. You might need, if you have a lot, if it's worthwhile, if you bring in a specialist or somebody who knows how to set that stuff up, then that would be worth, especially if it's like a very time-consuming activity. You might be able to get something set up on-prem, even if it's not super fast. Like you can just get a consumer-grade GPU that'll tie in, plug into a used gaming machine, and then run. There are libraries out there right now. They're mostly compatible with ChatGPT style, like OpenAI APIs, and you can just download models off the internet. Now, you have to set them up because there's some secret sauce in ChatGPT that makes it really good. Like if you just throw a PDF at ChatGPT and say, "Hey, what color is this house?" Like it will do a good job of that. If you just download a model off of Hugging Face and try the same thing, it can probably still do a good job. But like there's some secret sauce in ChatGPT that has it sort of returning you consistent responses if you're asking for a specific format, Markdown or JSON or like something like that. And you have to bake that secret sauce in yourself a little bit with sometimes, or experiment with different models that you download off the internet, because they're fine-tuned for specific tasks. Whereas I feel like ChatGPT is fine-tuned for a lot of broad tasks and has a lot of secret sauce in there. That's just my hunch, just from my experience of working with it. Gary says, "You're brave for doing what you thought of live. I got an error after creating a new scenario today. Was very frustrated." The tools can, yeah, I can see how, I think one of the advantages, because I'm a software engineer, I have a software engineering background, when I run into things like collections or arrays or bundles or iterators and all that stuff, it doesn't, I guess maybe I'm familiar with some of those concepts, so it's not as frustrating. I can definitely see how if you got into make.com, if you're not familiar with some of the concepts, I guess, there's a lot. It's quite uphill, right? So just stick with it. Or I mean, if you have a specific scenario or thought, or send me a screenshot or reach out over, my DM's open if you want to message me. Happy to give you some suggestions, Gary, if that's helpful. Adrian says, yeah, I'm setting it up for live 1 minute connecting with Adobe API. I'll have to try it out. I've never, it doesn't surprise me that Adobe, I mean, what surprises me is that if they didn't launch something like that for quite a while, because PDF parsing is just, with ChatGPT it's a no-brainer. It works really well. Okay. How does this apply to patient healthcare records? Yeah, don't, if we're talking about sensitive data, don't be pushing people's healthcare records into ChatGPT. That's all I'll say. Like, full stop, don't. If you are thinking about AI in the healthcare industry, you need to be consulting with experts or somebody to come in and help you set up something that you can run on premises and fine tune it for your purposes so that you can keep, because I don't know of anywhere that doesn't have really, really strict requirements around how you protect personal information like healthcare records, right? Super important. We must be, that's why like HIPAA and things exist, right? There are compliances that exist out there around things like healthcare records. Okay. Well, we got pretty far today. I think the next steps for me on this particular automation right here are basically, I need to come in now. I need to set up another scenario. So we've created one custom scenario called our website summarizer that our custom assistant has access to, right? Just very simple. It gets a URL off of the email domain. I'm just going to flip this Wi-Fi. I apologize if the live drops for a second. I need to switch networks. We'll see what this happens. We'll see what this does. I see my my Wi-Fi is having a hard go here, so I'm just going to flip over.